Alright, so today we're going to go through the CNC Router Activity 1.2, which is a drawing creation for chips and salsa bowl. Just showing you the purpose of this training exercise, of course, is to help teach you how to use some of the drawing tools in V-Carve so you get some more familiarity with them. And then be able to use that to actually write your program. This video, I'm just going to go over the actual drawing process and using the drawing tools that are in there. So first, to start off with, since I don't have any type of file, we're going to create a new file. And I have to set up my parameters. So in the case of the chip and salsa bowl, it's kind of going to be a square bowl. I usually like to take my scraps and glue up those scraps to go through that. So I'm going to set my width at 12 inches, my height at 9, and this will be about 3/4 of an inch on my thickness for this particular bowl. And again, you can make that anything you want when you're gluing up scrap pieces. But 12 by 9 I like. I think the finished dimensions on this are going to be about 8 by 8 or 8.5. We'll get to that as we go. But that extra inches in the width gives me a place to clamp onto in the actual part when I go to set this down and put it onto the table on my machine. So we can also set our XY datum position, our X0, Y0 for the actual part. We can go any of the four corners, or we can go right on the center. Now, a lot of times I kind of like to just go off of the center of a part, but if you've got positive stops set anywhere on there, where if you're planning on doing several of these pieces, of course, go off of the corner that you're using as your stops. So let me click OK, and we get into our drawing panel here. So we got file operations, 2D view control here, and we got several different tools in there. What the predominant ones that we're going to be using here today to draw this is these where we say create vectors. So all of these different tools in here. We'll be using some of the transform objects and some of the edit objects tools that are in this video as well. So now the basic shape of this chip and salsa bowl is a square. So I want to go ahead and the finished sizes of that are 8 by 8 inches. So we're going to start by creating a rectangle of that size. So we'll hit the draw rectangle. Let me close this up and show you one more time. So if I go to my create vectors here, I got draw circle, draw ellipse, draw rectangle, draw polygon, draw star. So those are my main ones. And of course you have just draw polyline or draw an arc or draw a curve. So I'm going to start with draw rectangle. This tool comes up. Now I can put the anchor point at any coordinate position that I want on this board. Now remember, we set X0, Y0 right here. So I'm just going to show you what happens right now. If I say I want my X coordinate to be 1 and my Y coordinate to be 1, so and I'm going to make a square rectangle. Let's just make this 3 by 3. And I hit create. Notice where it actually puts it. So we got to kind of pay attention to that. That's not what I want, so we'll just go up here to the edit button and undo it. I'm going to keep my anchor point. So actually, you might be wondering, let's go back. Well, let's create that one more time. Now notice this is not very intuitive, because we said the X is 1, the Y is 1. And our square size is 3 by 3. So the corner here is nowhere near 1, 1. So what is at 1, 1 is the exact center of this particular square. So notice that is 1, 1. which means that your actual coordinate point down here is minus 0.5 minus 0.5 as you go. So this can kind of confuse people depending on where they put that. So if I need to, I can go ahead and we'll click and change that coordinate to be the lower corner and create one there. Now the rectangle actually starts out with that corner being x1, y1. Of course, neither of those are really the ones we want. So let's go ahead and undo create, so we get those off there. I actually want 0 for my x and 0 for my y, and I want that in the center, predominantly because I made my part the center of my part when I set that job up. And we want an 8 by 8 square, so I'm going to go 8 inches on my width, 8 inches on my height, and I'm going to put a square radius. Just hit create. So here's my 8 by 8 square radius, or square rectangle. Now, I don't like these 90-degree corners on this. It's a chip and dip bowl. So as I'm looking at this and thinking to myself, you know what, this would probably look nicer. Instead of having 90 degrees, it would probably look nicer if I put a radius in that corner. So let me go back. We'll undo that. And to put a radius in the corner, I have two choices: radius external or radius internal, and you see how they change. So we're going to go ahead with a radius external. In this case, I'm just going to make this half an inch radius. We'll keep the 8-inch by 8-inch, and there, now I've got a much nicer looking rectangle square there with a gentle curve. Now maybe I might even want to go and put a bigger radius in that corner. That's up to you. That's all part of the design thought process. So again, I'll back it up. I decide, oh, really, half an inch radius, that's not that much. I want to go and do more. So let me go ahead and we'll back up here. We'll undo that. And now instead of the half-inch radius, let's put a 1-inch radius. We're going to double the radius size. Go ahead and create. There you go. Now you got that nice rounded curve, and it's just looking a little bit more aesthetically pleasing to it. So we go there and we do that. Now this vector that we just created is going to be the outside of our part that we're going to cut. But this is a tray, so we want like an inside pocket type of item cut out here too. So we'll make the outside of that basically a half an inch. So that means I'm going to do a 7 by 7 square in there as well. And here, in order to maintain that radius, so I do have to change that radius to 0.5 for that to be kind of, or half an inch for that to be in line with each other. And let's create that. So there we go. So now this is the outside of my tray going here. This is going to be the inside of my tray. Think of this as like a cafeteria tray or something that you might go where you have like a higher lip up here and it's inset in here so you can put stuff in and they won't slide off. So and that's what we're going to basically do when we cut this. Remember, we're 3/4 of an inch board, so this inside area here I'm probably going to cut out. I'm going to remove a half an inch of material, so you have and a half-inch depth, and then we'll cut all the way through the 3/4 going around there. All right, now I said this was a chip and dip tray, so we're going to add and leave some area in these 3 quadrants right over here for the chips. And I'm going to put a little like round feature right in here that will help us hold a little carafe of some sort for the actual salsa or chip dip, whatever your favorite chip is. All right, and we're going to do that. Let me close out of the Draw Rectangle tool. We're going to go here to create a circle to our Draw Circle tool. and we're going to create a circle right here in this particular area. Now I got to stop and think, what size do I want to make that, and what is my X and Y coordinate going to be? Well, here's my X0, Y0 on this part. So I want to be over here, and as you watch the cursor, you can kind of get a relationship and see where there. And in this case, we're going to be at, I'm going to try first -2 in my X and -2 in my Y. I can either have a radius or a diameter. In this case, I definitely know I want a diameter, and I'm just going to try a 3-inch diameter first for right now. So let's create that at 3 inches. There we go. Now, that 3-inch diameter, and I did actually choose that. I got these little white carafe dishes that I measured that I want to inset in there, and they're about 2 3/4. So this will give me a nice 3-inch diameter where I can just sit those in and let them rest in there. But again, I'm going to also then create one more circle here because I want to add material here. I'm going to cut this out. Now remember, when I'm designing this, I got to think of the areas where I'm cut out, what I want as high points and low points in there. So I'm going to create another circle going around there. I'm going to keep the same anchor point, and in this case now I'm going to go 3.5 and create that circle as well. That's going to give me a thin little lip going through there to get that done. So now I've got an overlap here, and I have to take care of that. So we certainly don't want that to be a part of it. So we're going to have to sit there and take some of that out, and I have a special tool here called the Weld Selected Vectors tool. So we also have the Subtract Vectors tool, or the Keep Overlap of Vectors tool. So we're going to try some of these out right now, and we're going to see. So I select the vectors. I want this one, and I want this one. Now notice, I can only click on one vector to highlight it at a time. If I want to click on both, I have to hold the Shift key down and then select the vector. Now both of those are like that. Let me come over here to my Subtract Vectors tool, and let's see what happens when I click this. Notice it takes out all of those. Now this is one of those weird nuances with V-Carve. So let me go back, let me undo this. V-Carve kind of takes precedence, like click precedence. So I clicked the circle first, and then I clicked the square, and you saw how it removed it. Now watch, now I'm going to click the square first. Now I'm going to click the circle and go in and subtract vectors, and see how that changed it. So there is like an order of precedence that V-Carve assigns to it. So you kind of have to get your thinking where you got, okay, what part do I want to get trimmed away when I use these weld or subtract vector tools? And you always kind of have to click this first and then that to subtract this. Again, if you forget it or not used to it, just hit the Edit Undo button, go back, and you'll be okay. Now I've got a area right in here that I can cut out, and I got my overall out here that I can cut out. This is just kind of extra. I don't need that, so I can click on that and delete that. So you're starting to see how I have like a tray in here, but there is a problem with this area right in here. And that problem is that a cutting tool is not going to be small enough, or I'll have to use a real small cutting tool to try to get into that corner. Well, it doesn't work, and Probably I'm not going to run for time's sake. I probably don't want to run like a 1/16 router bit, straight router bit in here to cut that out. So it's just going to take a lot of time. So I want to cut a little faster. So I'm probably going to want to run 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch straight router bit to cut in there. And of course that's going to give me a radius in these two corners. So probably won't matter for the tool. So we could probably get away with leaving it like this and cutting it. Because it would still only cut the machine when you go to program it. It'll know that it can't get in there, so it'll just kind of go in as far as it can and then go through. So you don't really have to do this, but it's just one of those overall appearance things that I kind of want to make sure that I draw right to get that in there. So I'm going to use another tool, the radius tool. So let's head back over here. There's a create fillets tool. You just kind of have to, till you get used to where all these are, just to generally kind of go through here in your edit objects. Notice here's a create fillets tool. So I'm going to click on that. And it's asking me, okay, well, what is the radius that you want? Well, I'm going to say if I'm using a larger tool, I want that to be a pretty decent size radius. So I'm just going to say that that's a 1/2 inch radius. And you do have some different types that you can go through here. I'll just keep this a normal one. And I can come over here and I can click any place there along here to kind of pick those up. Now, this isn't liking it. So we'll have to figure out something else in order to get that. There's probably something else that we need to do in order to get that to take care of it. So maybe that's another weld tool or edit objects, subtract tool icon, something in there that we got to do to kind of get this taken care of or make it a little bit better. Or in this case, if I really want to have a radius, but maybe I want to keep this kind of squared off. So maybe I don't even want that at all. So maybe I want to kind of say, let's go back, let's put another rectangle in here. So let's put a rectangle. So, and we'll put a radius external of 1/2 inch. So we'll keep this square actually. So, and in this case, my anchor point is going to be the same for my circle, -2, -2. And now, if I'm taking up this, if you think about that, let's go with a 2 inch by 2 inch square here, and let's create and see what that does. Oh, I left it at 7. Sorry. So let's hit the undo, create, make that 2. There you go. Too small. So we definitely want this to be up here. Now, I can look over here at my guides and I can see that that's kind of 4 inches, but probably not what I really want. So this is 1/4 inch off of there. So 1/4 inch off of there as I'm thinking through this. So let's make this a 3 inch by or 4 inch by 4 inch, just to see where that goes. There we go. Now we're kind of up here and we got a bigger one. Again, I don't like that, so we'll edit undo. 3.75 by 3.75. There we go. I like that better. So, because now I can come in and I can use the radius tool. So let me put the fillet here, 1/2 inch radius. Let me click right there and I've got that radius. Again, if you want to put a larger one, you just change that to say 1 inch and come back over here. It'll take it back to a square and then down to your 1 inch radius. Alright, so that's good. Let me close that. I'm going to select this vector and shift key down to select that vector and hit my weld tool notice what happens. That takes it all the way out. Again, that's that vector precedence of the way you click. So let's edit off of that. So let's do this one first and then this one, and go ahead and weld it. Still done the same thing. So here maybe we want to use the subtract vector. So sometimes some of this is just things you got to play around with till you figure it out. And there you go. Now I've got that in there. Let me get rid of this square. We'll just select and delete that. I got these corners, so I want to get rid of those. So let me go back to my fillet radius here. We'll keep that at a 1 inch. So we'll put that in like that and that in like that. Now, again, maybe I'm going to say, okay, so now you kind of see your overall tray, and I'm going to say, well, that's kind of awful big for my radius there. So maybe I don't want that radius. Maybe I actually want this to be a 1/2 inch, so smaller. So we'll go back. Notice it's going to change it back to square, and then you click on it again to make the radius. So here we're going to change it back to being square, and click on it again for the radius. And here I might say, well, I want this radius to follow the radius of my circle. So let's change that to 0.75 and come in here. We'll click that back to square, and we'll click that. Well, so I actually went the wrong way. Let's click it back. I was at 1 inch before. Let's go to 1.25 on my radius now and click that. There you go. Still not quite there. So playing around here with it, 1.5. So click it. There we go. Now we got a much more natural curve here as we go. I'll close that out, and that is my chip and dip tray. So again, I'll come in when I run my toolpath. I'll pocket out this area. I'll pocket out that area to whatever depth I want. I can do both of those the same depth. I can do one depth deeper, one depth shallower, however you want to do it. And then of course I'll go through and cut around here with a profile mill to cut that out. And I've got clamps on both sides of this board that won't interfere, and it's going to hold everything together there as I cut through it. So that is activity 1.2, how to draw the drawing creation for the chip and dip bowl. So if you have any questions, shoot me an email, see me in class, come during homeroom. I'll be glad to show you how to do this. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.